Welcome back. My guest, Pt.2, is a pastor, an industrialist, and also a lawyer. He became a senior advocate of Nigeria in 2003 and is a highly regarded maritime law expert in the country. Why is the Nigerian Maritime Agency, NIMASA, regarded as a cash cow by persons perceived to be corrupt? How can the war against graft be more effective? These are some of the issues I discussed with Mr. Pt.2. This administration is very passionate about the war against corruption, but despite this ongoing war against corruption, the Transparency International Corruption Index recently rated Nigeria as still very corrupt. Why do you think this is so? Why is it so difficult to tackle corruption in this country?
Thank you. I'm not sure that rating relates to what has happened or transpired between the end of May and today. I'm sure they don't have a timeline, something that's live, that's immediate or current. I'm sure that will still be with reference to the records they've held prior to this administration. I sincerely believe that this government, apart from their declared intention to fight corruption, with which, for me, they've been doing some good work. I wouldn't imagine that anybody would be so bold while sitting in this government and will continue as if it was business as usual. I will not imagine that.
In an effort to strengthen the anti-corruption war, President Muhammadu Buhari recently sent 2 bills to the National Assembly: the Money Laundering Prevention and Prohibition Bill 2016 and the Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters Bill 2016. What do you think? Do you think that we need more bills, or do you agree with those who say that we have a lot of bills, but what we need is an enforcement of these bills? Or some people even stretch the argument further and say that perhaps the president and his team have identified, some loopholes that are responsible for corruption cases stalling in courts, and perhaps that's why, they're bringing forward these bills. What do you think?
I can say, without being part of government, that if a responsible government initiated legislation in respect of any subject, you must believe that they need it. Yes, indeed, we have sufficient, or I wouldn't say sufficient, we have ample legislations dealing with corruption. But as we all know, both those of us who practice in the administration of justice and those of you who are from the outside, we know that this process of prosecuting corruption, is fraught with so many delay tactics and everything but what we want. That's number one. Number two, I have to admit I haven't really read the draft legislations that the president has, the bills that he has submitted to the upper houses. But I imagine that what corruption was, for instance, when he was head of state as a military man, Nigerians have redefined that corruption. We knew there has always been corruption in this country. And unfortunately, with each passing head of state, we say this is worse than the previous one. This is worse than the previous one. It's like they were competing. But I'm not sure we've ever seen anything like what we read in the pages of newspapers in relation to the immediate past administration of Jonathan Goodluck. I don't think we've seen it. Now, what that simply means would be that, in the context of your question, would be that, yes, at the time we were legislating on corruption, nobody could have anticipated the kind of the level of corruption we see today. So that will certainly be, I'm sure, one of the reasons that will have informed the draft bills. And secondly, of course, like you rightly observed, speed will be of the essence. This government has, like any other government before it, 4 years for the first term. and they can't use the whole of their term, fighting corruption. If they consider that there is a process that can be expedited, they will have to do it. Otherwise, before they knew it, the first time is up while they're still chasing the rogues and those who stole our money. So I'm sure those bills will have been passed with those facts in mind.
What would be your response to those who say that lawyers are a big part of the problem?
I'm entirely in agreement with that. Not all lawyers, and I'm not saying by a lawyer defending his client is guilty of complicity, no. But as lawyers, we know some of us do a lot of things that ideally you will never find in civilized part of the world. Lawyers who get briefs and they know it's a bad case, it's okay, let us take time. We can make sure we delay this. Now, that is not professional, that's not ethical. Also, in criminal matters, and I have no particular example in relation to the current ongoing criminal charges all over the nation, but if a lawyer wants to be unethical just to get more money from his client, he possibly can do it. We would certainly have a role to play. We can't blame judges alone without blaming lawyers. Not all the lawyers, but some of the lawyers. So yes, certainly we do have responsibility, which I don't think we shoulder the way we ought to.
What suggestions would you give for things to get better?
Every time we are down this route, if you like, I always say we should go back to where we took this from. There is a strict adherence to the ethics of the bar in England. I think the standard of practice, generally speaking, has been pretty bad, I have to say. Like every other profession in England and elsewhere in the civilized world, there is a requirement for you to keep renewing your license on a yearly basis. Before you can renew your license, you ought to have done certain things, run courses, and then you must not have cases of unethical behavior practices against yourself before you can renew your licenses. I'm not sure, even though I know the Bar Association puts up courses for lawyers, they don't attend. And there is no need, there is no requirement for you to meet certain standard for you to be renewed to practice next year. And until we get back to those basics, things will improve. So we need to get back to those practices to ensure that the standards come up again and is maintained.
Do you think that the stamp and seal policy introduced by the present NBA administration would help?
It will help, no doubt. You know, the problem always is, the problems are so deep-rooted, you can't sort it out in a day or two, or a year or two. But yes, certainly that will help. That will help.
Let's talk about NIMASA. The Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, has been in the news lately for some of the wrong reasons. You are a foremost maritime expert, and some people have alleged that NIMASA has allegedly become a cash cow for some corrupt persons. Why do you think this is so?
The reason we have problem in NIMASA is not limited to NIMASA. And if you were to take the best person whose family value has been warped to NIMASA, it's going to happen. If you took him from NIMASA, take him to MPA or elsewhere, it will happen. It's a fundamental societal problem which has to do with the absence of fathers or men or father figures in the lives of a lot of people. When I was growing up many years ago, we didn't, I'm sure you must have heard maybe from your parents, I know you're much younger, how much of value system we run in this country. In those days, you could leave your wares. If you're selling wares in the street, you can leave it there, cover it because of dust or rain. You come in the morning and it will be intact. You must have heard the stories. If you lost money on the street, they told you if you picked, lost and found money, you become a goat. So nobody did that. We were taught to respect our fellow human beings, to respect elders, not to take that which doesn't belong to you, to be content with whatever you have, all those are gone out of the window. Why? Because the men and the fathers have left home. They're in the house physically, some of them, but they're always searching for money. So they have no time to spend with the children. So those ones, and because nature abhors a vacuum, those guys, just young guys, look out for any man who can be a father figure to them. And if what they found is something that they read about Dasuki Gate, they thought, oh my, it's so easy to make money in this country. $400 million for doing nothing. Why do I want to go to school? Why do I want to? So, and if such people, as they grew up and the value grew up with them, wherever they found themselves, and they have access to public funds, they will steal it. So it's not a matter of NIMASA or MP or any other one alone. Perhaps, though, maybe because two things I will pin to the NIMASA issue. I think number one is access to forex, foreign exchange. Could be very tempting, especially if you don't have a good value system upbringing. Two, I think there is a very loose, if at all, accountability process in place in most of our government departments, most of them. Things get done so easily. How would they move that kind of money? And government will know about it. Some of the legislations I believe this current government is introducing would be to check money laundering, how much you can move,
access to it.
Has all of those. I mean, it was so loose before, but by and large, you must have a conscience. If you don't have a conscience, you can have 1 million legislations on the same subject. People will still find a way out.
Finally, former President Obasanjo recently criticized the National Assembly for not opening up their budget to public scrutiny. I think the budget is set to be about 115 billion naira. The president accused the lawmakers of sustaining a culture of impunity, opaqueness, and corruption. It comes back to corruption, but how do you think the legislative arm of government can be more accountable to Nigerians? Because I hear you say a lot about accountability.
First of all, it's surprising to hear His Excellency Chief Olusegun Obasanjo make that point, because he was there for several years, not once, and had every chance to do something about that. And that's one problem I have with him as a person. When he was Commander-in-Chief and was going to hand over, he could have done something about that. That is in the first coming. When he came for another 2 terms, he could have done something about that. I mean, he didn't, but let's leave that. Again and again and again, a problem is foundational. Majority, with the greatest respect, of those who are in the houses, they're not there for the love of the country, unfortunately. They're there for what they can get. Because if it is for the love of the country, you should simply open up your books. Now, let me say this. I have always said this, the solution for me. And I'm glad you asked me this question. Those who talk to me and we discuss subject of this nature in governance, I always say to them that this solution, which is hard, but without it, there's no solution as far as I can see. The solution is to make the legislative work a part-time job. How? What do I mean? There are a lot of, in Ghana, just next door, where I also have a law practice, a lot of the members of parliament, because they operate the hybrid system, the presidential and the parliamentary system. A lot of them are professionals, lawyers like me. They're always in court. They go there and they get minimal allowances. If we make it a part-time job, several things will happen. Number one, it becomes less attractive, except to those who really mean to help this country. I would very much love to go in there if it becomes a part-time job. I run my law firm, I make my money there, just pay me, if you must pay me at all, for my sitting allowance and transport to Abuja. That's all. The reason we have a lot of people there who will cover the budget is because they see it as an avenue to milk the nation to the detriment of the poor people on the roads. Now, second thing that I was going to do, if you made it a part-time job, it will attract the best materials. People who have made success or whatever they do in life, who don't need to steal.
The standard of legal practice can be enhanced with continuous legal education. There's also a need for the return of good old family values. These are just a few thoughts from my guest, Femi Atoyebi, SAN. What do you think? Please share your thoughts, comments, and questions using any of our social media handles. Don't forget that you can find these and past episodes of the program on our YouTube channel. I'm Shola Sheyeli. Thank you for watching.